Hello, everyone. Welcome back to DemonCast. I am your host, CamoDemon78. Today we have a very special guest with us. He is my best friend. I've known this guy for about going on 12 years, and this is his first time being on a podcast. So, what's up, man? What's going on?
Not much. Same old, same old. Not really much I can say, honestly.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. So, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about your channel? Like, what's some of the things we can expect?
Well, honestly, for a while I've kind of procrastinated on making my channel. Never really just had the will to do it up until just recently when I just finally went live with it. Um, Honestly, my channel takes a inspiration from a lot of different YouTubers, especially on the tech side of things, such as Last Tech Tips, DeBauer, Jace 2 Cents, especially him. A lot of respect for all of them, being how well they've established themselves in the tech industry. Um, on another note of what I'm trying to do with it is normal gaming, stuff like that, and something a little bit out of the ordinary that most tech channels and gaming channels don't ever do is a lot of outdoor stuff. I'm looking at doing it in a three different ways of types of content, which in my experience of watching YouTube for basically ever since I had access to it, I've never really seen anyone do that before. And I figure why not bring a new light to YouTube with a channel like this and just see where it goes.
Yeah, man. Hey, you're not wrong. So it's actually funny that you speak on the aspect of the whole YouTube going live with it just recently because I think we were actually just talking about it earlier, and it reminded me of the aspect how originally back a while ago you wanted to start out, and the ironic thing is back at that time, um, I didn't, and then later on down the line I ended up turning around and come to find out it was the ironic thing that I started out YouTube first and then you had followed behind me about almost a month later as of right now. So it's actually kind of funny how things work out.
Yeah, you're honestly not wrong on that. I do look at it as the aspect that I kind of was expecting, like half expecting that to happen. Just I wasn't too entirely sure if it was going to happen that way or not.
Yeah, so what's you got anything on your mind as to what you're gonna do for content wise, or are you gonna keep that stuff a secret? Just what's on the horizon? What can people really expect?
Well, as of right now, my main focus is just to at least get something established, which I already have 2 videos up. Um, right now, I'm mainly just going to be focusing on uh, mainly just like gameplay videos. I might do a tech uh, video or two, but I could definitely say as of right now, it's just gonna be mainly focusing on gameplay videos until summer hits. Which at that point, I might actually do might split off from the gameplay videos and actually focus on a series of videos getting my boat ready for the summer. From there, honestly, I really couldn't say.
Okay, so basically, you're speaking on your YouTube channel being very versatile, several different forms of content, which, like you said, is something that uh nobody you've seen, or at least that you know of, has like really ever done before. And I gotta give you credit. It definitely is a creative form of way to put out content and entertainment. So like, you know, do you feel that it could ever reach a point where it becomes too overwhelming trying to balance all three subjects within making content for the channel?
It really comes down to the person doing it, honestly. Like, as we as we all know, a lot of people, you could do the same thing. Like, say you have 10 different people, each person's going to experience that stuff differently. Honestly, I really couldn't say whether that's going to become a problem or not for me. The only thing I can really say is just I'm just going to have to see where it goes. Though I will say on the aspect that if it does become a little too much, I will at that point end up splitting off the whole bit of having all three in one. And at that point, I might end up making a second YouTube channel specifically for just the outdoor related stuff, and then keep the tech and gaming on the main channel, which would actually make it a little bit easier at some point, if necessary.
Okay, so basically going forward with that, do you ever at all feel like um, basically do you feel like do you feel as if you're gonna get lucky soon, or do you feel like your channel is just gonna take its time and grow naturally over the course of 6 months, a year, year and a half, 2 years? Like what's your honest thoughts towards like what you feel your audience is gonna do for you?
Well, do I really feel like it's gonna blow up? No. Honestly, if I really had to guess if my channel is gonna end up taking off, it's gonna be more in the aspect that I'm probably gonna end up having to build it over the course of a year or two. But we all know with how the algorithms work in uh, social media like YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Each of them has their own algorithm. All it really takes is just one video to make it on the the page of a couple 100,000 people, and then they just there goes your channel overnight. Do I really think it's going to happen with my channel because of how different it is from the norm? No, I really don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least you're keeping it real and not having, high hopes or high expectations, anything like that. But I mean, as we all know, things could happen unexpectedly, and you never know. Maybe the opposite effect might happen. Maybe because you have such a unique and creative way to bring content to new viewers on YouTube with three different categories of content, maybe that could actually target a lot more people and you could blow up faster. I mean, who really knows? It might not. It's just it's one of those things, you could never be, too assuring to not really say if it's going to happen or not. It could really be a 50-50 gray area.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I'm banking on for the ability to actually allow this to kind of work with what I have in mind is the ability to take stuff like the outdoors and the tech side of it and actually be able to put the two together to actually make content. Like, for instance, I've had a thought of this just it's just gonna it's gonna like happen when it happens. Like RC cars. There's a lot of electronics in those, and when it comes to the tech sides of the YouTube channel, working on those, repairing it, and so on. Because RC cars, you really only see that on outdoor related channels, not tech related channels.
Yeah, so one thing I do got to address really quickly is you'd spoke to me personally earlier about the aspect of you were making a War Thunder video and you were talking upon the aspect that the way you wanted to do content with War Thunder is you described to me that um you were basically explaining it as you wanted to make content with War Thunder, but you wanted to put a different spin on it from what you had seen because you wanted to bring more suitable knowledge and I'm guessing like I don't know if I want to put learning on the table for that, but you definitely seemed like you wanted to make more War Thunder related videos because tanks are a forte for you, especially, and you just, I'm guessing, wanted to bring more real knowledge and facts and actually how to use tanks and, use them properly so that way people are not uh, having problems, sitting there getting destroyed left and right and stuff like that.
Okay, so when it comes to War Thunder, a large, I'm not going to say a lot, but there is a large player base of the game that doesn't actually know. I'm trying to figure out how to explain this in the correct way. The lot, see, War Thunder follows a lot of actual physics based play in the game when it comes to armor, the armaments of of the vehicles and such. That if you want to be truly effective with your vehicles, you have to understand physics and how a lot of that stuff works, how the penetration of the ammunition that you're using, the type of armor that you have on your vehicle, how that works, and how it interacts with the different rounds. The War Thunder is one of the closest games that in existence right now to reality when it comes to all this physics. So being I have a very good understanding of how a lot of that works, how a lot of the armor and armaments work. I want to use War Thunder to make videos to help people who play the game understand how a lot of it works. So maybe they can get some information out of it to make themselves better if they so see to do so.
So it's actually funny now that we're talking about War Thunder because it actually brings me back to um, the the more personal side of things between me and you as best friends. That it just reminded me of the aspect that a while ago we had actually started out on War Thunder uh, after the concept of watching the movie Fury with Brad Pitt and Shia LaBeouf. And we started out playing War Thunder, and you helped me grind through my American tanks, my German tanks, and stuff like that. But then when it got actually to a point where I kind of started branching off and playing more into solo with like Russian tanks and by myself grinding Russian tanks, and then I found the aspect that I liked dealing with planes and whatnot sometimes, but not a whole lot at that time because back then it was kind of the aspect I just wanted to just focus on my tanks and keep things simple. But it's actually funny because War Thunder for you is a game that is like your forte, like you absolutely love playing it. But the ironic thing is for both of us, we actually enjoy it in two very different ways. Which is the ironic thing is because you would think, being that we're best friends, um, you would think that best friends want to play almost all games together. But that's what a lot of people don't realize is that you could be best friends and you could have games that you both play, but there could be an off chance that you don't end up playing together because of, you're just two different individuals that like playing it in two very different ways.
Yeah, I can definitely say that myself. Um, that War Thunder is actually a very good example of this, as to what you just said. That it comes down to just personal preference. Me, I started out playing uh War Thunder back in college. I was actually a lot like you. I only used to play arcade. I really didn't venture out of arcade until, I want to say, late in my final year of college. That's when I actually started playing realistic.
And
And
not to cut you off real quick, but you were in college from 2015 to 2017, right?
yes,
And that was basically what, about 8 to 10 years ago now?
yeah, I've been playing War Thunder ever since then.
Yeah, so that definitely puts a perspective on that.
Um, Once I finally got out of playing arcade, I basically, at least in my aspect, found that realistic really puts, like, just the slight changes that they put in place where you can see your own team, but you can't see the enemy, along with the aspect that they actually put the mobility settings for the vehicles actually to a much more realistic standard. It actually gives a very whole different dynamic to the game. And I just quickly fell in love with that and just really never looked back. In my experience with you, you've always preferred the uh, more fast-paced combat that the arcade offers, more rather than the more realistic of the realistic mode.
Yeah, and it's actually not the same type of fast pace as most people play nowadays, like on Call of Duty or something like that. It's actually a more like less competitive fast pace. Like it's basically, to explain it, it's kind of like a fun fast pace. Basically, what it allows me to do is it allows me, at least when I do play War Thunder, it allows me to take tanks and, basically just go balls to the wall, be squirrely. I can, drift around guys and they're still trying to turn the turret, and meanwhile I've got the turret on lock and I'm just like throwing rounds downrange into them, even though I'm like less than 10 feet from them, and they're they're just going absolutely nuts trying to get their turret around so that way they could destroy me, freaking out. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting there having a grand old time with it, just absolutely ruining people's days sometimes. Not that I'm liking to be an asshole. It's just, when you get into that groove where you're just having fun, you're just sometimes going all out and you don't actually realize how hard you're going. And yeah, but going back to what I said about the whole bit about it being fast paced, I mean, like we we really do not like the whole fast pace video gaming nowadays. Like I think going back to Call of Duty, I think we actually tried playing Warzone like maybe a handful of times, and when we actually did, we had realized how implemented the new, quote unquote, battle royal style of gaming actually implemented it into most of the battle royal games that it became so different from the normal, like, tactical style within military based games that for people like us anyway, I mean, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely know I could speak for both me and you that Call of Duty just got to a point where they implemented the what they call the quote unquote battle royal type style, which is all that fast paced, slide canceling, jump up and down, bob back and forth, all that stuff. And it just got to a point for us where we said, nope, we ain't doing that. We went back to playing PUBG, and we really never looked back at Warzone. And even though we still dealt with the bullshit of the cheaters here and there sometimes, and possibly some people hacking and using aimbot, we still pushed through and we had some good times.
Yeah, the whole bit about the fast pace combat um that kind of quote unquote got implemented into COD. It was, as far as I know, as far as I can remember back, I believe it started somewhere around, I want to say, Black Ops 2, if I'm not mistaken.
That was,
Like,
Lord, that was a while ago.
yeah, I believe it really got started somewhere around Black Ops 2. If memory serves correctly, I was reading on some kind of Reddit channel or somewhere that, and this does actually kind of make sense, that the the reason why it was implemented was it was more or less just on a player base implementation that it just kind of became the norm, is because they were dealing with, it was the new generation of gamers coming in playing against the old style like tactical shooter people who've been playing these types of games for ages, that they couldn't actually deal with how good of a shot they actually were. So the whole battle royal style, like fast paced combat, was actually a tactic used to combat the actual tactical players that use actual military tactics, because that's the way the game was designed originally. So it was just a tactic used by the new generation of COD gamers to combat it. Basically, just not standing in one spot long enough for them to actually get a shot off. and then just over the course of the generations of games, Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, and so on and so forth, even all the way up until just recently, the newest version of uh,
I think it was Modern Warfare
Modern
3.
Warfare. Yeah, Modern Warfare 3, which is what really started to kill off the whole fast-paced bit because of the new mechanics that got put back into the game, which was actually the old mechanics of the game, which really didn't allow that to be used. And this is where it's starting to hit the reset on it again, where it's going to go. In my mind, I'm hoping that it actually goes back to the tactical shooter that it always used to be, and not catering to the whole battle royal style movement, quote unquote. Because I would really like to see a true reset in this to actually go back to what it should have been and what it should have always stayed.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because you just reminded me of a lot of things. The aspect of what Call of Duty used to be in the sense of it changing. Uh, Basically, Call of Duty back on like the 360 was like where that it's like where peak Call of Duty was,
Oh
and
yeah,
then basically once it transitioned to Xbox One, because Xbox One came out in 2013, so that was the that was like the real gray area where everything kind of officially started changing. So it
yeah, it was.
it got to, that point to where, like you said, it was like new generation going against old generation. But the funny thing is around that time, that's actually where Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 time frame came out. And when you think back on it, you think, man, that was like 12 years ago. So that was like over a decade. And now we're getting to a point where we're in modern day, you know, we got the Series X, the Series S, the PlayStation 5, you know, and stuff like that. But it really goes to show you that the player base is so stuck on what they like here in modern day that they're literally bringing back older style games in remasters, but it doesn't really show that these companies are doing anything good. It's like, yeah, okay, you can bring it up to date and all that, cool, but like, where's the new and improved content? Because the more you progress forward in research and development, there should be more and more new things coming to light, not going back to the past and bringing the past up with you. Because that's what, like, if you keep old content trying to keep it new, then it just becomes boring after a certain time. So it's like, me personally, I don't understand why a lot of the companies do that when they should more or less be focusing on improving the game from where it's at rather than trying to make an older game brand new again and just reselling it to make more money.
Well, when it see the whole bit about basically remastering games and putting
Like, I'm not
old
against it. I just want to say that. I just really think that, at least remaster it in the sense where you can kind of keep the old style of the original way the game was designed. But
yeah, when it comes to basically the remasters like we've saw from uh Activision with uh Call of Duty. This is a it's not so much on the devs when it comes to this, it comes more on the corporate side. It's the corporate side of a company being so out of touch of reality with their player base that it's corporate greed. It's not the devs' fault that this the way a lot of these games are. It's not the devs. It's not the dev studios. It's the overhanging umbrella of the corporation that's what's causing what we're seeing with Call of Duty. With all the problems that we see with the games, with all the bugs and all that stuff, all like literally the entirety of Call of Duty that is the problem is not the development, it's not the game itself, it's the corporation causing all of this. If they would let the devs do what the dev studios are supposed to do and not micromanage them 24/7, 7 days a week, let the devs do their job, Call of Duty would have never migrated to what it is now from what it used to be.
Yeah, no, and it's again, I think it's funny because we've actually spoken on similar stuff like this before, like you know the aspect of going towards consoles themselves and actual gaming equipment. It's the funny thing that we've spoken on the aspect between Xbox versus PlayStation and like AMD versus Nvidia and stuff like that. And we keep on saying each and every day that we have these conversations and talks about this that it's just like, you know, one day one company's doing something nice and that it makes sense, and that same day the other company's doing something stupid or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like the next day or a week later or something, it could be flip-flopped, and the company that was doing something nice and that actually made sense is now actually doing something stupid and it doesn't need to be done, and then the other company vice versa. It's like, what company can you actually trust that's actually going to be worth, giving your money in at to?
A lot, in my experience, it comes down to a lot of it is, again, it just all comes back to corporate greed. Like whatever company has the least amount of corporate greed is kind of the one that you actually just go with.
Yeah, but when it comes to like hardware and consoles and all that, that doesn't
That
really
that's a real
exist.
hard thing to say. Exactly, that's a real hard thing to really say on.
I think they know that too, so I think me personally, I think they use that as a marketing strategy, to be perfectly honest with you. So it kind of brings it to light that kind of you kind of know ahead of time what to expect. Like, you know, for a while there, Xbox was having problems with um, a lot of their releases on Game Pass. And yes, I'm not afraid to admit I will sit here and talk about Xbox, even though my channel is based around Xbox gameplay. But the thing is that doesn't mean I'm sticking up for PlayStation anymore. Even though I own all three platforms and I play all three platforms, it doesn't mean I'm gonna stick up for one over the other or the other two or whatever you want to call it. I'll just as easily sit here and say something bad about PlayStation just as much as about Xbox, as much as I'll say something good about the two or even PC. Because the way I personally look at it is they all have their own problems. They all have their own basically they all have their own pros and cons. It doesn't really matter which one you look at. It just matters that at the end of the day, it comes down to the choice preference. And as long as you're happy with what you got and you enjoy playing the stuff that you play, like, you know, do, just do you. Do whatever you want. Play the games you like to play. That's why that's why for a little bit there I had console wars is dumb on my headings and my bio and stuff like that, because I personally do think that it's dumb. It's literally like at least I think it's nothing more than a marketing strategy to have the two companies try to outsell each other, which again goes back to being dumb because preference has nothing to do with which one is better.
And I can actually go several ways of this. conversation here about this, but sticking with the whole bit of the whole console wars bit on it, I really think that a lot of it back in the day, it was actually it was more of the corporate side to actually try to make the better console, but all the way up until I think that kind of really ended around the 360 era. And once like the later end of the 360 era, like the early Xbox One, it became kind of more on the consumer side of the whole quote unquote console war. That's when like really the whole thing actually kicked off. And I believe as the ages kind of went on, Xbox One, the Xbox One S, the One X, all the way up until now with the Xbox Series SX, the different variations of the PlayStation, that a lot of it is more on the consumer side and all the key in my mind, a lot of the keyboard warriors on the internet actually not really knowing what they're talking about. The consoles themselves are great. It's just as each of them have their own flaws, but in reality, hardware wise, they're neck and neck. Both of them have AMD APUs. They're both running off the same generation of architecture. The only thing that's really different between the two is their cooling solution and the software that they run. Like they're basically the same thing, other than just minor visual differences and the fact that each of them has their own exclusives. Like there's almost no difference between them. Like the whole console war thing really ended back during the 360 era. And in reality, it was just a stupid argument all over the internet after the fact.
And yeah, the funny thing is till this day, all over the internet, it's still a stupid argumenting factor for a lot of the gamers in the community. And what I don't understand is because you sit there and you look at a hobby like gaming, and now that we're in modern times and we have the internet, World Wide Web, and all that, and you know just everybody can now connect with each other. Even if you live like in the United States, you can connect with somebody in Japan or Australia, and stuff like that. But most people don't look at it like that, like coming together as a community to enjoy stuff. The vast majority of it is like back and forth. Like some days you could have it be 25-75, where 75% of the majority of the community is getting along, having fun, and enjoying the fun in a new game that came out, or and then the rest of the 25% is like having a bad day, or just being assholes to the rest of the players. And then other days you could have it to where 25% of the people are having a good day, and the rest of the 75% are having some sort of bad day and just wanting to be assholes for whatever reason. And I think a lot of that really, for me personally, stemmed towards the aspect that it deterred me away from online multiplayer gaming for that aspect. Because, like, when I sit down and play, I just want to be able to sit down and relax and, enjoy the real aspect of gaming, not sit down and try to be competitive because someone's having a bad day or I'm having a bad day or just whatever the case may be. Like, at least for me personally, gaming should be something where we all come together and enjoy the, quality time we have to sit down and enjoy our hobby, not sit down and fight in our free time. Like, that stuff is just, in a word, I probably shouldn't use this, but that stuff is just honestly kind of childish and really immature.
Yeah, I can definitely say the same thing for myself. I've really never been really big on the whole online gaming aspect, more or less in the sense of like Call of Duty. Like I came into playing Call of Duty very late. Like, yes, I played since like the era of
Probably around
um
when you were in college, like 2015, 2017, that era.
well, I'm speaking on the aspect of like the actual like games. I did start back playing Call of Duty with
That was
like
probably around
like
Black
on
Ops 3.
PlayStation 2.
Yeah,
I started playing
yeah,
on PlayStation 2.
yeah.
Um, but when it came to like actually trying out like the online aspect of it, I started on Black Ops 3.
Which Black Ops 3 was like the shittiest Black Ops out of all of them.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I never got into playing it, because by then it was already infested with cheaters, hackers, and all that kind of crap. So I just kind of looked at it, I'm like, I'm not even gonna get into that. So that's the reason why I went to War Thunder. War Thunder, like, yes, the community in War Thunder is can be a little bit toxic at times, but the thing is that it's not. If you actually look at it side by side between the COD community and the War Thunder community, the War Thunder community is more of actual. Like, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, they actually act more like grown adults than the COD community. Like, I'm not trying to hate on them. It's just you if you actually take it for face value, the COD community is just a dumpster fire. Like, straight across the board it is like literally a dumpster fire that someone's walking up to and just pouring gas into it.
I mean, hey, you're not wrong. I can attest to that.
And if I really had to put a reason as to why the COD community is like that, the COD community is like I'm not really trying to hate on them. It's just my experience is all I'm talking from. My experience with the COD community is it's literally just a. I really hate to put it this way, but it's like literally a bunch of 25-year-olds that have never moved out of their mom's basement and never experienced life.
Yeah, that's actually where
Like, that's the only way I can explain it.
me and Picklefork get um the term where we use a lot when we talk about stuff like this. That's where we get the term uh, we use as what we call sweats. Basically, they're just, big, fat, sweaty people that don't ever get up off the couch. They just sit there playing video games nonstop to the point where they can literally play any game that they set their mind to just to get good at it, and just they don't do anything else other than that. And it actually, at certain times, depending on the game, it can get so bad to the point where you're sitting there playing, and it almost sometimes make you wonder whether or not actually playing video games as a hobby is worth it. Sitting there knowing that some guy somewhere on a couch just sitting there sweating, playing video games, just so that way he can get good at it, where he doesn't go to work or anything like that. It just really makes you wonder some days when you're trying to be a real person, go to a 9 to 5 job, come home and want to just sit there and relax and play video games. And then you're just sitting there trying to enjoy yourself, enjoy your free time, have a nice time. And again, that kind of goes back into what I was saying earlier about the whole bit about fighting and having bad days in video games. It just really makes you wonder, why does it have to be the aspect that that guy who's what we call a sweat, sitting there, playing the games that way, he can get so good to the point where all he's got to do is even remotely look in your direction, and he just one taps his controller and you're dead and moves right on, and you're just sitting there trying to enjoy a game that you feel you want to play, and then it just ruins your whole mood, and then you completely shut the game off, and you walk away all mad or something, and you're just like, oh, this is bullshit. This community's turned to crap. It really sits there and gets your mind going, and really makes it uh, paint a picture in itself to basically, how do I put this? It it really makes you it really makes you wonder what the world has come to, especially when it comes to hobbies, knowing that people are willing to go that extent just because they don't care, especially when you have like a heart of kindness or whatever that makes you a genuine person, and they're just sitting there trying to ruin your day because they don't care and they got nothing else better going on. It just That stuff just really annoys me, and I really feel like those people should not be playing video games like that. Like, if you want to play something and sit down on the couch all day and be a sweat, why don't you just go play something solo, or just, play something that doesn't interfere with real natural players just trying to play for fun, but trying to play an online game because the game is designed to be online only.
Well, it really comes down to like why it is like it is with this is because I really hate to say this, but this is all aspects point to streaming. It all aspects as to how a lot of these games like this have gotten as bad as they are is because of streaming. If you actually look at statistics, these games went downhill at the birth of online streaming. That's where all like if you actually look at like Call of Duty, Black Ops 2, when it really picked up with the online battle royale stuff and all that kind of and whatnot. That was around the same time streaming got really big. And then all of a sudden, all these online games went downhill really quick.
It's actually funny that you say that based around the time frame, because that was basically right at the birth of the Xbox One, which,
And that was the very first true console that you can stream from.
yeah, it's actually funny to think about that, because going back that far, 12 years, you know, at this point in time, being we're in 2025, we're streaming and, you know, constant uh, gaming videos are popping up on YouTube left and right. You would sit there and think, like, it's normal nowadays, but, back 12 years ago, something like that was like, it was a rarity to talk about. And like, if someone sat there and talk about it and like, oh, gaming streaming, like, what the heck is that? And it really sits there and it makes you sit there and think about, how far the history of gaming has come. And I mean, going all the way back to, God, what was it, the 80s, where basically Nintendo
Like
came.
the N64.
Yeah, Nintendo came out with the N64 and all that stuff. It just truly shows you how fast time actually flies, and just how quickly things advance. Like all of a sudden it was the late 90s and we had the PlayStation 1, and then all of a sudden it was the new millennium. We had the PlayStation 2, which we experienced the PlayStation 2 for an amazing 6 years. The PlayStation 3 came out, and then sadly it went downhill from there with PlayStation. And then it kind of got back up to where we are now, modern days, with PlayStation. I mean, the PlayStation 5 kind of did redeem itself. Um, but
Me personally, its launch was an absolute.
oh yeah, for sure.
It was a bag of ass. It was a hot bag of ass.
Oh yeah, for sure. And same thing with the Series X and S, because between both consoles, scalpers were buying them up left and right, turning around, charging like 4 times the amount from MSRP, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. It put the market on intergalactic backorder for like a year and a half. Because I actually remember, the funny thing is the Series S that you now have. I don't know if you remember or not, but which you probably do. I actually gave that to you back in, what was it? I think that was like late 2021. Yeah, because those consoles
Yeah,
released in
around
2020.
around the same time that I got the computer.
Yeah. So basically around late 2021 is when I gave you the Series S and I upgraded to the original Series X that I had. Um, it's actually funny because uh yeah, it took me a year and a half to finally get that console. And then once I did get the console, it wasn't but like not even a year later I got the Series X as an upgrade. So it was probably like mid 2021. Like it was definitely around summertime. And then that was like later that end of that year, like November or something, is when I got the Series X, gave you the S, so that way now we were both officially caught back up and on modern generation. It actually is funny because it makes you sit there and think again, with like I had said before, with the history of console gaming and just gaming in general, going back to the raw originals of me and you, we started out in the heat of the Xbox One era, but we actually didn't start out on Xbox One. We started out on 360, which those ancient bricks were a hell of a fucking time to do anything with, especially when they would start to overheat, and then we would be like, okay, we got to take a break and cool these brick pigs down.
Oh, the on speaking on that note, see, the 360 era was a really big going from the Xbox, the original Xbox to the 360 was a huge technological jump because of that the time frame that that was in. They the technology for APUs and whatnot was advancing extremely fast. But the thing is that during that time, they really didn't know how to actually make a console. Like even still to that day, they still didn't know how to make one because Microsoft was still really getting a lot of their manufacturing processes ironed out. So the cooling system in those could actually fry it, believe it or not. Like there was not enough air moving through the uh the console itself to actually keep it cool. That's the reason why you actually had to stop after like I think it was like 4 or so hours that the internal temperature of the console would reach almost 200 plus degrees. That's the reason why, like, even if you were to set something on them, and which is that was a big reason for the Red Ring of Death with the 360s, especially the version I had, which I believe was the Elite, which had the concave front on it, and it had the little touch sensing uh on button that
Yep,
even if you just walked past it, it would turn it on or turn it off.
yep.
That's a whole nother story in that by itself. But um, like the Elite was really good. Like they actually did some changes to it, but even if you were just to set something on top of it, even if it wasn't on top of the exhaust fan, just setting something on top of it would actually keep enough heat, would retain enough heat in it because a lot of the heat was also radiated from the plastic. Temperatures inside that thing would get well above 200 degrees just because the how compact, how large a lot of the components inside it were, that it restricted a lot of the airflow going through it. So that's the reason, one of the many reasons why like the 360 was so notorious for burning itself up, just because the manufacturing process for making a console wasn't there yet for Microsoft to actually figure it out until they reached the Xbox One.
Yeah. On that same note, with the heat problems that we all know when it comes to gaming, and I don't remember if I've personally spoken with you about this before, but being in like Reddit and Quora sections sometimes doing research and whatnot that we all find ourselves doing, I have personally come to the realization that a lot of people don't understand the concept of cooling systems on like GPUs or the cooling systems built inside of consoles and everything. And it just really makes me wonder how they manage to get as far as they do with the equipment we have for modern day gaming. Because when they're sitting there saying, oh, like for example, a graphics card like the new 5000 series with NVIDIA coming out, I remember
Hmm.
seeing comments on some of their videos where people are sitting there saying, oh, well, why does a graphics card need to be that big? Uh, let's see here. The problem with it is the graphics card is that big because the cooling system built onto it is helping keeping it cool, so that way it can help your performance levels be a lot better to perform the way you want the computer to perform. If not, those heat levels are going to rise up the fucking internal temperature of the PC, and then everything is just going to basically start heating up, cooking itself, and then you're basically going to have fried components, a bricked GPU, and all of that. And same thing with consoles. People just do not understand the aspect of cooling the consoles, which, me personally, I'm a big advocate for external exhaust fans. So the more airflow you can get going through at least a console anyway, me personally, I think it's the better. And same thing. I've found out that people sit there and look at those like they're absolutely worthless and made for no reason. But yet, you actually have to sit there and look at it and think about the physics behind it. When you have more air getting pulled through and blowing across your hot components, physically and literally, it's going to naturally cool them off, especially when you do the great thing of combining your natural air temperature, or if you can, get your internal room temperature wherever you're at with like maybe say an air conditioner, or if it's in the middle of winter and you can pop your window open without having to worry about cooling everything down and having your heat in your house or your apartment overwork itself and upcharge you more money. If you can figure out a way to get some good natural cooling going on, whether like I said it be an air conditioner or open up the window in the wintertime, or even use a dual fan system in your room, or two fans and two windows, just getting some kind of airflow going through to where it naturally cools the room, and you could physically against your skin feel that the room temperature is actually on the colder side. Like a lot of people don't actually realize, and it actually amazes me that that actually helps the cooling of either your PC or your console, and just it actually helps improve your performance levels or your FPS and all that stuff. But people like, I don't know, I guess they just tend to ignore that or just don't realize that that stuff actually works. And like I said, it amazes me.
So on that note, like I'm not sure how far you actually want to go into the whole tech side of this, because I can go as deep as you want to with this. But on the simple side of this, the when it comes to the temperatures of components, it's a 1-to-1 ratio with the ambient room temperature. And this has been proven time and time again over on Jay's Two Cents, DeBauer, Linus Tech Tips. They have done a very, very in-depth research into the ambient temperature with your components. If the temperature of your room goes up 1 degree Celsius, the temperature of your component is going to come up 1 degree Celsius. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. So naturally, the cooler you can keep your room, the cooler your components are going to be, and that is going to help along, especially with consoles. It is drastically going to increase the life of the component itself. The components inside a console is made out of what is called silicon. It's a type of quartz glass made from sand. It it's naturally going to degrade over time with high temperatures. This is what's going to happen. So the longer the cooler you can keep your room temperature, and the more airflow that you can actually get through the console, the cooler temperatures you can keep it doesn't even really matter with performance. Like, yeah, it does help with performance. Like, I've seen that myself firsthand with the testing I've done, but it's more or less on the aspect of longevity. The cooler you can keep them, the slower it's going to degrade, and the longer you can keep it.
Yeah, and I especially do agree with that myself because, as you know, uh, ever since the 360, you've seen me. I use a console way more than I use a PC, and you know firsthand that I always use an external fan for uh cooling my console. And it's actually funny that matter of fact, I've used the same exact fan ever since the 360. That thing is still going strong to this day. It
And
shows
the worst part about it,
yeah, it shows no signs of crapping out. And the funny
and
thing is it's homemade.
it's I because I was the one who made it for you. It's
Yeah.
literally just it's just an ancient. I believe that thing came out of some old Dell. Uh, I believe it was some kind of like old Dell Inspiron or something like that. Just some ancient pile of crap that I just pulled it out of. Found an old charging brick from like an old I believe it was some kind of like HP laptop. Oh hey, yeah, it has the same power output. Was it what this fan needs? Hmm. I need a cooling fan. Wires it up and it works. It's still going today. I don't know how it still works, but it is.
So you probably don't remember this, but we actually had that conversation at one point in time. You I think you either like looked at it or something, or you got the name off of it and you like looked it up. But I do remember you telling me um you found out that the reason why it's not going to basically crap out pretty much like ever is because it's essentially like a commercial grade cooling fan, and it's just
Yeah.
built to the hill. Like it's gonna probably go strong up until the day I retire from gaming. That's probably at least another 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, I've actually do remember that exact conversation we had. That I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that fan, from what little research I did about it, those fans are known for far outlasting anything they were ever put in. Like, because of how simple the design for the motor is, it's designed the motor design on that is like an industrial machine motor, very just simplified and put down into a fan. Like, that fan will literally outlast anything you ever have, and they're dirt cheap too. Like, you can probably go online and find those fans for like $3 or $4.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, you got companies on like Amazon, for example. They're sitting there selling external exhaust fans for the Series S and the X, and they got some of them out for the PlayStation and whatnot. And they're sitting there charging upwards of 20, 25, 30, 35, $40. And it's like you could literally sit down and make something better that will last longer for literally like maybe $10 at most, and probably take no more than like 10 minutes of your time, and you're done, and the thing will last forever.
Oh yeah. Oh, no, most definitely. Um a lot of that kind of stuff is really overpriced in my opinion. But trying to find stuff like those fans that you use for cooling your Xbox is becoming increasingly hard to find. Nowadays, like when it comes to fans and whatnot, you're pretty much if you want to do something like that, which is more possible back in the day when stuff like those fans were relatively accessible, was a lot easier. Nowadays, you're kind of like forced down the road of either buying the overpriced stuff or you really you're kind of forced to use PC, like actually like modern day PC fans, and you have to go out and go buy um fan controllers and whatnot, like what I found online that I actually, believe it or not, I think I told you about it like a couple weeks ago. The that little box that has the dial on it that you can plug into a wall and actually variable speed with the 3-pin fan headers.
Yep, I know what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
you're pretty much forced to do something like that. But the thing is, for fans nowadays, any fan on the market for PCs that can actually do what that fan does is like $30 or $40 per fan, like the Fantex T30s, the same ones I have in my desktop. $30 a fan to match what a fan from like the early 2000s could do for like $4.
Yeah,
So you're pretty much priced at that about that $30 mark, either which way.
yeah. It's absolutely crazy because like you just said, you know, early 2000s stuff was only like $10, maybe not even, and now we're only like, 20, 25 years later, and we're looking at the aspect where things are just being so upcharged in the aspect that it's almost like that because we live such a modernized lifestyle where social media and YouTube and everything is a thing. It's almost like, at least me personally, it kind of makes sense in the aspect that it's almost like they want the the generalized concept of more expensive parts and all that on their marketing strategy, because I'm willing to bet you they probably think, like I said, because social media and YouTube and all that is such big things nowadays, I'm willing to bet you they're probably leaning more towards the aspect of marketing towards people who do social media and YouTube and all that, because they have more money generally than the normal regular 9 to 5 people like ourselves that have actually come from, living poor and knowing what it's like to actually having to make sacrifices with certain paychecks and having to cut corners at sometimes because we didn't have the fullest extent to go out and buy the actual product at its regular MSRP. We've had to go out and buy an off brand or go to like the thrift store and buy something that's, still junk but still can relatively work, but yet you don't know how long you're actually going to get out of it. But at least you spent $5 on it instead of 55, and you're probably looking at something that's like a piece of plastic that probably ain't going to last very long, but yet that's only for the aspect of like the throwaway stuff. If you want the actual good quality stuff nowadays, they upcharge you mostly in most applications. The good quality stuff nowadays is so ridiculously overpriced that it's hard to find good, genuine quality stuff that has a reasonable price tag. And going back to what I said, I personally think it revolves around the aspect that they look at the marketing strategy for their own stuff as they're marketing more towards people who have a bigger chunk of change. Like, they sit there and say, oh, 80,000 to $100,000 per year is now the new normal for, what yearly salary should be and all that. They're probably marketing towards people who have, that bit of price money, or if not, in the couple hundreds of thousands that they can make per year. Meanwhile, normal people like us over here working a 9 to 5, we're over here sitting making anywhere from 35 to probably like no more than 50,000 a year, and we're still getting by perfectly fine, and we're looking at the people making 80,000 sitting there complaining that they supposedly, don't have the money to do this or do that and everything, and we're sitting there looking at them like, what are you complaining about? We're paying all of our bills, and we're still able to, buy the stuff that we want for our hobbies or just to do whatever our free time. So it goes back to, like I said earlier, the aspect that it amazes me on how these people, like, think and what their minds process. Just it's like it's a whole nother world. It's like it's a third world country inside of our own country.
Oh yeah, I I guess it all comes back to corporate greed, and it really there's really is a good couple examples of this. Like I'm not hating on Fantex. Believe it or not, Fantex is one of my most favorite brands. Like the case I have for my desktop, it's the Fantex NV7. I have all Fantex fans in it except for what's on the radiator that I have in there, which is made by Arctic. Um, a couple examples here are the Fantex T30s. There is like I absolutely love those fans to death. They, in my mind, are the king of fans on the market. There is not another fan on the market within the price range that they are priced at that can beat it. Not even Noctua fans come even close to beating the Fantex T30s in performance wise. The amount of airflow they can push and the amount of static pressure they have, you cannot beat them. But $30 a fan is absolutely horrific. There is no reason those fans like I can understand if they needed to recoup the cost of development. Okay, $30 a fan for like the first year. You just covered all your research and development. Lower them down, $20 a fan. That would actually be more relevant. Another good example of this right now is the RTX 5090. There is no reason that card should be 2 grand, and that's for the Founders Edition. So if the Founders Edition is going to be 2 grand, what is the AIB card is going to be? 2200, 2300, 2500. We're already seeing scalpers trying to sell the cards that they have bought up for over 8 grand. There's no reason that these cards should be priced the way they are.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it's absolutely horrific.
it's literally coming down to a lot of these corporations are starting to set the price tiers. Like okay, like the 5070 and the 5070 Ti, there's no it's the same thing. They've literally taken the entire tier level of their graphics cards and shift them up in the price bracket. The 50 to the 70 series is being sold at what the what the 80 series is being sold at. The 60 series is being sold at what the 70 series is being sold at. Like that whole price shift should not be happening. Like the cost of like they always blame it on, oh well, the cost of making this is going up. No, it hasn't. inflation has not. Okay, so if you actually look at inflation and what it has done to the tech market, say a $500 graphics card. Okay, if you were to adjust that for the cost of research development and production, now that card would be sold for 550. Not a $500 card being sold for 800, 900. No, it's literally corporate greed and what I like to call skimpflation, trying to sell you less for more. If you also look at the performance side of a lot of this stuff, the generational jump, so price to performance is getting worse with a lot of modern equipment. Like even just down to basic fans, as I stated earlier, a lot of this stuff is getting worse and the price is going up in a sense. Stuff is This performance is still getting better, but the price that is being sold for is outrunning the performance jump. So it's getting worse. It's all coming down to corporate greed because they want you to constantly buy the higher and higher tiered stuff just to make more money off of you. And the 50 series graphics cards are a massive example of that because you don't actually get enough VRAM to play games at the rated specification of what that the chip itself is capable of doing.
Yeah, so
Like,
so
go ahead.
with the graphics cards, it's actually funny that you mentioned that because me and you were just talking about RAM earlier, and that
Hmm.
actually just reminded me that um the laptops we have only 8 gigabytes of memory in them, but that's not what I was getting at. It actually reminded me about the aspect that isn't it coming down to the fact where we're at the point where GPUs are basically at this point needing 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but we're seeing cards for full size desktops come out that are new that only have 8 gigabytes in them.
I actually, believe it or not, that's literally what I was about to get at. See, um, if you go back to like the 10 series and 20 series, back in those days, like 2016 all the way up to like 2020, 8 gigabytes was still good enough.
Hmm.
Like just when the 30 series launched back in 20, I believe it was 2020. Let
Yeah,
me
the
actually make sure
30
I'm.
the 30 series had to have launched then because I just looked up not too long ago the release date of the 3060 that I had in my old desktop. It literally said that 2021 is when it released.
So yes, the 30 series launched. The original release date of the 30 series was September 17th, 2020. Yes. So the way that just on a real quick side note, and we'll get back to the whole bit about the VRAM. The way that the 30 that the Nvidia launches their cards is from the top down. So they always release their highest end cards first, and then slowly over a course of like half a year or so, they actually start to release the lower end cards. So yes, the 3060 released in early 2021. But now on the aspect of the VRAM, the 30 series was about the last generation that could actually deal with the titles at the time with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. After that, we started to see a massive increase because of the different types of game engines that were coming out that demanded more VRAM. A really big title like I believe like they're actually a title that really showed that the limitations of 8 gigabytes of VRAM is like Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 was a it if if a card had 12 gigabytes of VRAM, it really used pretty close to 8. If you certain situations you would see it use like a upwards of like 10, but at the time 12 gigabytes was about was it gave you a pretty good cushion. Once you started getting up into like 2022, 2023, you really started to see cards that could play 1440p at like 120 FPS. You had to start turning down the settings because it was filling the VRAM. 1440p cards became 1080p cards, or even like 1440p low settings. And we have corporations, hence Nvidia, still to this day, this the 5060s, 8 gigabytes of VRAM in 2025. The card's useless. Like you could still play some titles, but if you try to play modern day AAA titles with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, it can't handle it. Like you're being forced to turn down the settings to compared to what the chip is capable of doing. The chip itself is more than capable of playing a lot of these titles nowadays at 1440p, but because of the VRAM limitations, sure it has GDDR7. What good is that when you're limited by its capacity? And that is one of the biggest things nowadays that Nvidia knows that 8 gigabytes is not enough, but they do that on purpose to force you to buy higher end cards. Matter of fact, I actually believe in my mind, I believe the 60 series cards within the next couple generations will no longer exist. They will not be making them. They will force you to buy a higher end card. And without the 60 series, they could actually jump the price of the 70 series by about another $200. It's literally just a corporate scheme that Nvidia knows that they're forcing you to buy a higher end card.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Which, not that I'm knocking PC in general or anything. It's just, for me personally, it got bad to a point where I just did not want to sit there and every 6 months to a 2 year time frame, I did not want to sit there and replace parts on a PC. I mean, again, not that I'm knocking the concept or anyone that does PC gaming religiously. I myself, I am a big person of simplicity, and I know you know this firsthand. Um, Simplicity to me is one of those things where I just want to incorporate into my hobby with the aspect of when I've had like a long day or I just want to keep things simple on my day off and quick at that most times. I literally just want to be able to, in a matter of 30 seconds, sit down, grab a controller, turn the console on, and just basically let it start up for its 10 seconds that it's going to take, and then immediately be able to load up a game all within that 30 seconds and not, have to sit there and worry about, oh, is, my drivers updated and worry about, is my processor working properly and is all my fans running and all this and that. I mean, not that I had a problem with it doing it in the 3 years that I had a desktop. I just definitely got to a point and realized where, for me personally, it became more of a hassle than what I felt was worth it, which is exactly why I went to the extent where if I was going to sit down and actually play on my PC, I was going to make it worth it and do it at like month long stretches at a time and actually sit there and get utilization out of it out of that time frame. Whereas with a console, um, especially when everything is working properly to the point where I can manage to keep everything updated during my week while I'm at work. And then once the weekend actually comes and I can get all, my personal errands and chores done and all that. And then when I actually do get to sit down and play, I like to keep it simple to the aspect that I can immediately sit down, like I said, and within 30 seconds to a minute, I'm already in game playing, enjoying myself, enjoying my day off, and, just letting the hassle and stress of all the stuff that comes with the advanced, at least I think it's advanced style of gaming with PCs, just, not exist in my mind.
Yeah, I do have to. PCs are. I will agree with you on the aspect that they can be a little bit more temperamental. That you do have to take a little bit more care of them than say like a console. A laptop such as what we're using right now is actually a really good replacement for people who want to be able to play on a PC but keep things a lot more simple. And it really just comes down to something that actually, believe it or not, something that uh, we talked about. I want to say it was like a month or so ago. It comes down to personal situation as to what form factor of gaming is more suitable for your situation. Hence, like you, console and a laptop, that's very optimal. Hence myself, I actually can have a desktop because of my situation. A desktop honestly makes a lot more sense. Having a laptop for me is a bonus because I travel a lot and I get out, get around. Having a laptop makes a lot of sense. It really comes down to personal situation.
Yeah. Going back to that personal preference thing like I was talking about earlier, um, shedding a little bit more light on that, the whole thing I was talking about with console wars, even coming down to the aspect with PCs too, whether it be laptops and desktops, or even more specifically brand wise with your hardware and your parts, whether it be AMD or Nvidia, like the same thing applies. Preference is preference. As long as you're sitting there enjoying yourself, it doesn't really matter what you have. Like the aspect where, going back to again to the whole console wars thing, it's just a bunch of keyboard warriors online just trying to speak their mind and getting other people to change, their opinions and whatnot. And it's like I said, that's not what gaming should be. Like, yes, I do understand the aspect you have your opinion, but I personally think that a lot more people should understand and know the limits between um, where something needs to be said and something should be said. When you just want to simply say something because basically you want to, that's completely different from needing to be said. If you're sitting there saying something along the lines against someone buying, like, say, an Nvidia for, let's just say the card costs like 1,500, and they can barely afford, you know, to pay their bills if they're running like, uh, a normal 9 to 5 or whatever's going on, and they're barely making it by, and they're sitting there wanting to buy, an Nvidia for 1,500. At that point, it does make sense to be like, yeah, no, you really shouldn't be, buying something like that if you can get yourself an AMD for the cost of like less than half of what the Nvidia is going to be running you, and you can get the same performance, if not better. Like, preference wise is mostly personal choice, but in terms of aspect of like friends or closely associated, yes, there could be, those times where, going down to the aspect where I say needing to say something is actually necessary, but it more or less dabbles in the aspect that you care about the other person and you don't want to see them get either ruined or screwed or have the, you know, whatever choice they made uh, crap out on them or just make their day a lot more shitty than what it originally was. And just, yeah, I rant too much on it, but it just that's one of those things that just truly gets me when it comes to gaming as a hobby. It's just people need to learn to let go more and just, stop trying to per se their opinion into others to get them to agree to the same thing. Because when you sit there and you think about something that makes sense, obviously it's going to make sense to you in the way that you think about it. But when you try to convey your message and you repeat yourself and you push and push and push to try to get to somebody understand your point of view more, the only thing you're doing is you're actually conveying the opposite effect as what you actually think you are, which again goes back to the whole thing about the community being toxic and sometimes is that the aspect is, it's just unnecessary. And it's like I said about the console wars, it's just something that's stupid and immature and childish. And even still to this day, when, we're more modernized and, you know, we should be at the aspect where preference is being conveyed more than the whole bit about the console wars. That's the way it should be. It, it still draws me back to that same old thing. It's like, why do we have to be like this as a community? But then again, you also sit there and you remind yourself that it's just like this is just life. This is the normal thing, which sometimes I know we wish it didn't exist like this, but sometimes you just got to sit there and remind yourself that it is what it is and there's nothing you can really do about it.
I definitely agree with that a lot. Like, one of the biggest problems is when it comes to the PC industry is that there was always this stigmatism behind AMD that I'm using this as an example that all the way up from I believe I want to say it was the late FX era. Actually, no, I think it was the early FX era of their CPUs that it was always, oh, Intel's so much better, so much better. And then when uh, ATI was bought out by AMD and it was went from being the ATI Radeon to AMD Radeon. It was just always this big stigmatism behind AMD being the inferior um brand. And now look at it. AMD is beating out Intel like it's not even close. The 9000 series AMD processors outperform the Core Ultra 285 by miles. Like we're talking about 40% in some cases, and with the whole bit behind um, the Radeon drivers always having issues, that doesn't exist anymore. A lot of what the whole the whole community in this is it's always been stuck on this aspect that Intel and Nvidia have always been better. When in reality, it's speculation in certain applications. It's just they got in this whole thing of just constantly pushing it's just a narrative when all it takes is just a little bit of research to do your own just do your own research and you can figure out what's best for you. It's application based.
Touching up on that real quick, I don't think a lot of people actually realize the aspect of what doing your own research can do for each individual person. And I think that's what uh, causes a lot of the confusion with most people that actually do have the consensus of understanding things. Uh, they end up tending to jump to conclusions because they just try to find an easier solution to understand something rather than actually put the time and effort in to research something and find out the true information. Like the aspect that social media is such a big thing nowadays, they just see anything that they see on there, and all of a sudden, for them, somehow, some way, it just clicks in their head, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, that does kind of make sense, when in all reality, the information is completely falsified. And it really puts a picture in to your mind. It's like, well, if people can easily be, manipulated when it comes to uh certain things like that, then it really makes you wonder how many true natural genuine gamers out there can actually understand the stuff, but they're, like I said, they're easily manipulated because they don't bother to better themselves on knowledge for what they have interest in.
And that actually goes to show the what kind of control social media really has. Like the in this, and just going back to the whole tech thing here of Nvidia, that's one of the biggest reasons Nvidia has the control on the market that it does is because of social media. That actually goes to show how social media can manipulate a consumer base into believing certain things. And that's again goes back to the whole narrative bit that it's just social media has such a hold on a lot of what people do.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong with that aspect. It just it's one of those things that, man, it sometimes it really tears me up to think that a lot of people could, have better potential understanding stuff to actually, make better choices when it comes to gaming, especially when picking out better, choice options when it comes to certain things. Like, I'm not knocking anything particular, like either, consoles or anything, because let's face it, there's a great amount of choices on the market right now for any kind of, you know, console you want, whether it be disc or digital, or, you know, whether you want to be brand wise, whether you want it to be Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, whatever, whatever. And then you even got the aspect where VR now has, the many different brands that you could choose from, like Meta, and then you got the PlayStation VR and the what was the other one? Not the Meta Quest, but
If you're talking about Oculus, Oculus got bought out by Meta.
yeah, the Oculus when it was, good, and
And even
before
got
it got bought
handheld
out.
nowadays.
Yeah. Um.
Got they got like the Asus Ally. We should be seeing at some point in time a new Steam Deck, but there's not really much information on the new Steam Deck. All I heard was a couple months ago that there is some new tech in development by Valve. But we also have the new Switch 2 coming out at some point.
I actually heard a rumor that I don't know if this is true because obviously, it's just a potential rumor floating around. There actually might be a new form of PlayStation handheld coming out, which is actually
I
good
haven't.
because the PlayStation Portal kind of really did flop in the aspect that, yes, it's a handheld, but it didn't actually meet the true portable design as to what PlayStation normally would do in that aspect. That console was basically just it was basically just a portable uh, version of the regular PlayStation 5 that you essentially played on remote play, and you couldn't really even take it out of your
It,
house.
yeah, it was. It's basically just a really, really weird version of kind of like cloud gaming in a way. Like doesn't it never actually had any form of actual dedicated graphics built into it. The only thing it really had was just, from my understanding, was just kind of like a really weak APU, just enough to generate an image. All of the actual gameplay was done on the PlayStation itself. Think of it kind of like what you can do with AMD with the desktops. You can use your phone as long as you have the AMD. There's a special app for your AMD desktop, so you can have on your phone, that allows you to basically use your desktop to play the game, and it just kind of over Wi-Fi will stream the game to your phone. It's kind of the same concept.
Yeah. Speaking of gaming on your phone, standard mobile gaming from like the type back in the day where you just normally go on your Play Store and you know just download apps like
Mhm.
Clash of Clans and just the regular standard like phone games, like not anything that has the capability of what we have today, like with the being able to use the Xbox app on your phone to do cloud gaming or with PlayStation and all that. Believe it or not, that still to this day is actually a very big uh, form of gaming, even though we have the cloud capabilities of Xbox and PlayStation, and all you got to do is, just connect your controller up to your phone, and it will work perfectly fine as long as your phone is capable of running said games that are, playable through cloud gaming. It just, it really shows you, again, going back to the whole bit about history in gaming, whether it's mobile or PC, Xbox, or not Xbox, console in general. Um, it really goes to show you that all forms of gaming still have the aspect of the older stuff in history still being good, even in modern day times. Especially like, uh, with the Nintendos and the Ataris and stuff like that, even though we may not see a lot of that stuff on like YouTube and whatnot or getting talked about, that stuff still holds such a big piece in history that a lot of people still have it, and uh you might only just hear talks about it, and that's just genuinely because of how you know good the history of gaming has built itself upon its original foundation, even going back all the way to what was it, the early 80s, maybe even the late seven or yeah, the late 70s with arcades. I mean, still to this day, like the concept of arcades has come so far that they're now, implementing them onto consoles themselves.
Hmm. It just, it kind of goes to show that like a lot of the older stuff, it just doesn't, it never really dies out because of the fact that it was the backbone of what we have today. If you forget where the roots of what you like dies off, it's really going to have an impact on to what it really becomes.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely does make sense. Uh, Speaking of history of video games, there is one big piece of I really don't know how to put a word on it. It just this officially for me experiencing in gaming, especially in the last 20 years that I've been doing gaming. Um, this is definitely one of the more bigger things that I've seen that's come to light in the community itself. And we've kind of seen similar things like this before. Like, for example, uh, with the Stalker series, we just got Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl from
Hmm.
the original Stalker series from that first video game that came out in
I
like
believe it was
what
like
the early or
2008.
yeah the late 2000s. Um,
I think it was.
the aspect that we now have Cubic Odyssey on the horizon, which I'm pretty sure is the next generation Minecraft, and just everything that that game housed in its trailer. I mean, I spoke upon this in my first cast. Uh, the game just honestly for what it is, it looks absolutely amazing. They have this new like like I don't know if it's like a mining laser tool, a mining some sort of mining gun, or just whatever it possibly could be, but just yeah, that combined with the aspect that you got like vehicles now that you could transport yourself around in, um, it flies, and even beyond that, there's like actual in-game NPCs now that you can actually like uh do player versus environment and like get into little combat situations with them. And supposedly now with the aspect of being able to fly around, you can actually now go into space and all that, which I definitely got to say going from Minecraft to Cubic Odyssey, like that was definitely a probably like a 2 or 3 generation leap in gaming because Minecraft came out in 2009, and we're sitting here 16 years later. We finally got the next game to Minecraft, and we're sitting here and just we look at the trailer, and it's just absolutely amazing to think that a game such as that could be so simple and so fun. And literally, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me correct, Minecraft was literally the most popular game of all time? Like, does that information seem correct to you? Because if I'm not mistaken, I think that was actually correct.
For the longest time, I believe you actually are correct that Minecraft was within the top five at bare minimum for multiple years running. As for Cubic Odyssey, to me, I don't particularly think it actually gonna be the true next iteration of Minecraft. I believe it's kind of like it takes a lot of the roots of what Minecraft is. It kind of just like expands upon it, but it's not gonna be a true Minecraft replacement.
Oh no, no, not at all. Like it could never be a Minecraft replacement.
No, like the only actual like true Minecraft, like Notch himself, the creator of Minecraft, would have to actually re-step in and take over
I'm
the
pretty sure I thought he did say that he announced
no
Minecraft 2, which I don't think
there's
he actually named it that.
I don't see, there's a lot of speculations as to whether he's actually going to do that or not. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you whether Notch would actually is going to be doing that or not because there's been a lot of speculation over like the past year or so about it. But that whole aspect of Cubic Odyssey, it's just a to me honestly it looks like someone got really creative with it, really expanded upon it, which to me I believe I even told you this that it honestly looks like they took Minecraft and mixed it with No Man's Sky.
Yeah, like no, like you're you're correct on that. It definitely looks
It
like
takes a
that.
lot of aspects of No Man's Sky.
The
Um,
funny thing is going back to that conversation we had when I actually sent you the gameplay trailer of it. I remember you texting me in your very response. You had actually said "No Man's Craft" in it, and then I actually remembered responding to you that in the comments people were actually saying that about the video, and it was just so funny to me that you had said that because I actually thought you had looked in the comments and seen that someone said that, and I thought you were laughing because of that. But in reality, you had actually said that on, your own terms. Like you never even read any of the comments, and that was just amazing to me that even you thought that yourself.
oh yeah, like the it was literally like the first 5 seconds of me watching that. I'm like, dude, like, did someone literally just splice No Man's Sky into the game? Uh, it just basically just meshed the two together because there's so many aspects of both games in this. It's absolutely insane. Like it's literally in the way I watched that, it literally looks like it's a 50-50 split right down the center. Half the game looks like No Man's Sky, the other half the game looks like Minecraft.
Yeah. So apparently on uh, a quick side note here, some quick research I just did, and this is actually the very funny, strange part about it is when you look at the gameplay in the trailer for Cubic Odyssey and you notice like how the textures and everything look so closely related to Minecraft. The funny thing is based on a little bit of research I just did, the not only are the creators but also the developers and everything for Minecraft and Cubic Odyssey two completely different entities. But yet, it just goes to show you how closely you can take the concept of literally, like we had said, Minecraft and No Man's Sky and incorporating them together. And even after finding out that Cubic Odyssey is not the second Minecraft, my mind is still set on the aspect that the game still looks so fantastic that I still want to play it, even though there is no correlation, no relation to it. Just Cubic Odyssey looks so unique in itself. Believe it or not, it's already made my top five for what I'm most excited for in 2025, and we're not even halfway through the second month of the year yet.
Mhm. Now, I'm probably gonna start a whole thing here by this, but I figure that we probably should talk about this, and that is the aspect of roadcraft.
Yeah, you beat me to it. You really did. So,
I'm gonna get this one here. When I first heard about roadcraft, I just thought honestly it was just another kind of
which,
spin-off of uh either like expeditions or SnowRunner. When you showed me the
which,
gameplay,
the funny thing, real quick, the funny thing is as you know me, I'm a SnowRunner nut. Like I absolutely love
yes,
SnowRunner, and even being a veteran of MudRunner 2 and level 30 pro trucker in SnowRunner, um, the funny thing is with you being an even lesser of a fan of SnowRunner than I am, it was
no,
actually ironic
SnowRunner's
because
good. It's just
no, yeah, I know. It's just going into the aspect like we talked about earlier, War Thunder is like, your forte, and that's where like you're a real nut for. Whereas like SnowRunner is like basically like my thing of my bread and butter with that. But
Hmm.
back to what I was saying, it's actually funny that we talk about this because originally, like I said, with me being the SnowRunner nut, you were the one that actually found out about roadcraft, and then one day all of a sudden it just popped up. It's like, oh yeah, you never heard about roadcraft, the game where you could sit there and clear debris from roads and build your own roads and everything. Of which at that time you still had like a very plain basic idea. Like at that time you weren't too thrilled about it, like you didn't know a whole lot. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's another like new generation version of SnowRunner coming out, and it's still made by Focus Home and Saber Interactive, which I looked into because obviously being a SnowRunner nut, I absolutely also love Focus Home and Saber Interactive. Like that developer and publisher, they are just they do such an amazing job with a bunch of their games. I when I originally looked into Roadcraft, I was absolutely shocked as to what I'm seeing, and then just recently we actually got some of the gameplay view trailer, and then when I originally finally showed you that actual trailer, I still remember your reaction to this day. Your jaw freaking dropped so damn far. I literally almost thought you were gonna catch flies.
Yeah, as, as I was saying, like when I first heard about it, and this was years ago, when I first heard about this, when it was in like when it was still on the drawing boards as to what the game was going to be, I originally thought that this was just going to be just another spin-off of uh either Expeditions or SnowRunner. When as you said, yeah, my jaw damn near hit the floor. That's no joke. I cannot explain the just how much they actually. I really feel like they actually let the devs do their jobs in this one. Going back, like when I said, like with COD, how they don't let their devs do their job. This game here is actually the true meaning of letting the devs do what they do best. If you want to make a game that is actually going to draw a much larger audience, you have to let the devs do their job because their job is to make a game that is going to draw an audience. With what this game is capable of, from what we've both seen from that gameplay trailer, I actually believe this is going to set a new precedent in video games. With how intricate you can get with this, like most games that attempt to do something like this doesn't it kind of feels half baked. The fact that they're actually allowing you in a sense to, okay, hey, you got your main base here, but there's a lot of tasks that you have to do uh, that you have to get to a certain location, but the only route is to take the long way around. You could literally you can clear out half a forest if you want. You could, oh hey, yeah, there's a swamp here with a whole bunch of forest around it, and you don't want to constantly have to take the long way around to get materials for your tasks. You can literally cut down a path, rip out the stumps, lay down gravel, sand, fill in all the water, and lay down a whole brand new road in the areas that you want to make your travel time a lot less. The fact that they're actually allowing you to do stuff like this, I believe they're going to actually set a new precedent with how video games are made.
Yeah, which that's actually what's drawing me in most of all when it comes to Roadcraft is the fact that it's now taking the concept of SnowRunner and adding just that much more versatility into the game overall. That it's like I said earlier, like um when you progress in uh video games with research and development, that's the actual true way to do it. Make the game bigger and better and the new and more modern type thing. Not, take an older game and try to make it more, popular based on a newer generation audience remaking money on it. No, like that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love Focus Home and Saber Interactive because they've they really came to like Snow or Mud Runner uh came out in like I think it was 2017 or 2018 or something, and that was around the time I originally got the original Xbox One, which is
Yeah,
where I started playing Mud Runner then, and I remember playing it on and off between that time and the time of when SnowRunner came out, and when I was still playing Mud Runner, like I basically got um I did everything in that game. Like before I was never the type of person to, want to do everything in a video game. I never had before wanted to 100% everything. But literally Mud Runner was the very first game ever in my life I actually took the time dedicated to actually completed everything. Like each and every map, every watchtower, every task. Well, they didn't have tasks at that point. You were just delivering logs to the lumber mill and all that from the uh, log yards and all that. But yeah, just that game really set a new precedent for me when it came to uh, basically open world sandboxes like that. I'm pretty sure that was the very first open world sandbox I had ever found myself truly playing. And I knew from that point on, open world sandboxes just absolutely became um they became a really huge part of my daily just what I found interesting in games. And then the moment SnowRunner came out, that took a drastic leap in research and development for games of its type. And when everything came to light as to what SnowRunner offered, where you went from a bare brass game to where all you had was preset trucks to work with, and you know the only things you had was you could change like the bed on them from like uh having like a little two uh 2 point garage bed, or you had the different types of uh beds for logs to haul around with the Russian trucks that you had and all that. Then you took the leap to SnowRunner, and now you got multiple versatile trucks. You got 4x4s, you got 6x6s, 8x8s. You know, you got all the different add-ons and stuff that you could put on these trucks with like the cranes, the sideboard beds, the flat beds. Some trucks you can even use it with a saddle high or a saddle low, stuff like that. And then you had the options where you could go through, change the tires, and you had different selection points for even that category. Basically, you had the main category and then several subcategories underneath it, and then you had miscellaneous stuff where you could customize the exterior, customize the interior. You could go through, change the engine, the actual gearbox to, suit the type of terrain you were going to conquer. Like you could set like I remember back when seeing the trailer and they were showing the stuff for SnowRunner, I remember seeing the stuff to where you could change like, your bumpers and your crash guards and stuff like that, and it was truly a game changer going from a game that came out in the Xbox One to a game that came out late Xbox One, early Xbox Series. So, it was one of those things that it was like, you know, it all happened so fast, but the execution was perfect up until the point where SnowRunner started running into problems on console where it wouldn't render properly because of that memory leak problem, which is also funny because in one of the SnowRunner gameplays that we did not too long ago, That problem actually arose up in that video. I just never actually executed it to the point where it would cause that problem because I know about it now rather than back when that problem was first arising. I know about that problem now, so whenever I experience it, and it's a multiplayer thing, it's always been a multiplayer thing. I know about that problem so I can combat it beforehand without having to have that problem actually cause problems for gameplay. Because what it came down to was when you're in multiplayer, it happens to do with fueling from your reserves that you can carry around with you. What will happen is when you go to refill your tanks or just with whatever you got, your reserves for whatever you can carry around, whether it be in your truck bed or just some spare fuel tanks that are just strictly storage, anything like that. Because I was in my Acteon and I went to refill my tanks with what was in my service spare parts. Um, or no, sorry, I think it was my roof rack, but either way, uh, I refilled the tanks in my truck, but yet the the jerry cans in my roof rack were still saying they were full. So it's like one of those things that it's like, okay, well, that's not right. So at that point in time, when you know you've used it for the first time, but it's still saying that it's full, it's kind of the aspect you have to be in the know to know. And if you don't know, then generally you're in trouble because you think that it's like, oh, hey, it's just a normal glitch. I could use that and take advantage of it. Yeah, well, the sad reality of that is if you try to take advantage of it, all it's going to do in the end is crash your game and have multiple problems with the game prior to even launching. And then, as we know from experience, we had a problem like that one time. And literally, we were trying to play on a Sunday. We had to go back to work on a Monday. The problem never arose and fixed itself from stuff that we had no control over, literally until like 2 to 3 days after the problems that we had experienced.
Hmm. But back as to you were saying,
Yeah, just roadcraft, like, it really sets a precedent to newer research and development in games. Like
and
going back to what we had said based on Cubic Odyssey, like I kind of think it's like the same thing, even though it is supposed to be truly the next generation of SnowRunner. SnowRunner is still so unique to itself, like even with expeditions. Like they took the aspect of expeditions and made it what it is, but yet it will never be, another SnowRunner. Just like Roadcraft, it will never be another SnowRunner. But also at the same time, even though SnowRunner is the game that it is, if Roadcraft just so happens to magically be better than SnowRunner, which me personally, I mean, I don't like to say a lot of things are going to be better than something else, but I actually personally do believe that Roadcraft is going to be better to a certain extent than SnowRunner, but SnowRunner will always be a game that is truly of quality for its time. Like you couldn't you couldn't find nothing else for an open world sandbox that literally had the quality aspects of SnowRunner, especially when it had mod support. Like I think the only thing that came close to SnowRunner in terms of quality for an open world sandbox, the only thing equivalent had to be farming simulator. But the thing is you can't really do a comparison because farming simulator is based around farming, whereas SnowRunner is based around uh, harsh terrain trucking, which there's no real comparison between the two because they're both in their own genre.
hmm um, when as you were saying the whole bit about game development, I'm I've been really paying close attention to the type of games that have been being released for like the past couple of years. I haven't seen a generation to generation jump like what we're seeing with Roadcraft in quite some time. Matter of fact, and so that the this is one of the very few corporations that's actually doing this large of a generational jump. And so the aspect that this is actually drawing people in from different generations. Matter of fact, actually, believe it or not, I showed the gameplay trailer to my dad. He wants to buy the game himself, and he's not even a gamer.
Yeah.
If this is saying something, my dad's in his 50s. He doesn't really like playing. Like he only really likes like old style games. He actually wants to play this game. If this is going to show, if this shows anything, this actually shows that Focus Home Entertainment is actually doing their job correctly.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that because I realized that Focus Home Interactive and Saber, they they both have put the time and effort in to make their games what they are. And I've generally realized that if it's like a multiplayer game, especially like SnowRunner, they know the type of audience that's going to sit there and play, you know, that type of game. Like, it's a trucking simulator. There's not a whole lot about it that suits the aspect that it's like, you know, violent or not suitable for kids or anything like that. Like, they truly target literally everyone. Like, I don't know what the actual rating on the game is. It's obviously got to be E for everyone or T for teen, something like that. But um yeah, they target such a wide, very wide audience on that aspect, and they have done such a good job doing so that literally they know uh, they're gonna have fathers and sons playing it together. They're gonna have, best friends playing it together. They're gonna have brothers playing it together. They could potentially even have, in some rare occasions, uh, couples play it together in the aspect that, couples like gaming together and doing stuff like that. And so they, they know that with a game like this, they can target such a wide variety of people more than the norm, which is exactly why SnowRunner still to this day is so big that any kind of gameplay on it still gets very reputable views even 4 years later, going into 5 years later with the next game on the horizon. But Expeditions sadly didn't live up to what it could have been, which I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it was kind of plain and all it was just exploring. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm a guy that loves exploring in open world sandboxes, but when you dwindle it out to basically just strictly exploring and you're doing nothing but driving off the beaten path 24/7, yeah, that concept does tend to get boring very quickly, I'm sorry to say.
Um, yeah, the whole bit behind uh expeditions, it was a good. I really do have to say it was a good concept, but really think that they kind of. I don't want to really say it was half baked because it was a really good concept. I just don't think they actually realized that the amount of content they would have had to put into the game to make it viable. I thought I think they were thinking that they could get away with more or less kind of doing like not so much dwindling it down, but more or less honing it in on one aspect that it didn't really appeal to the audience that they had. So that's when they realized that what they really needed to do was what they did with Roadcraft. And I'm thinking that's where the aspect of the failure of expeditions is what made them realize they need to go back to the roots of what SnowRunner is and expand upon the capabilities. Hence Roadcraft.
Yeah, it definitely, like I said, it definitely brings it to light. They definitely put the research and development into it, and they
And
did such a
that's
great job.
and that's what a lot of these corporations ain't doing.
Yeah, definitely not. And it's sad to say because there's so much potential out there, and they're neglecting it.
And another um game that is really. So I'm gonna use two games here, a comparison. Starfield. I love Bethesda. Skyrim is an absolute amazing game. It's gonna be the Elder Scrolls 6 is gonna be hard to. Is they have a lot of work to do on that, but with Starfield is a game is one of those games where they thought very big, broad, but not deep. The game was very broad, but did not have a lot of depth to it. Okay, Star Citizen is what Starfield wanted to be. Because when a corporation thinks broad, it doesn't go very deep. But here's the thing. Um, what was the name? I can't remember. I can't remember the name of offhand. Like I know the name of the corporation that made it, but Starfield is one of those games when a corporation actually again lets their developers do their job, but also that gives them freedom to think autonomously, letting the developers actually listen to the community as to what the community wants. They have stuff planned out for the next 15 years of development of the game as to what you can do. They have stuff planned out that they can't even implement yet because they don't have the technology to do it. They have stuff like they have ships planned to be put in the game that you can't even bring into the atmosphere of a planet. They don't even have the technology to even implement that into the game yet. When you give your devs the ability to actually think autonomously and actually listen to the community is when you can create a game that will change the face of how games are developed. But uh, when you get corporations, hence like Activision, that are focused on nothing but how much money they can rake in, is when you start to actually collapse a game industry.
Yeah, no, like you're definitely not wrong in that. We've literally seen some several big flops in the past 10 years happen because of stupid shit like that. And a matter of fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Starfield was one of them. Just the the overall hype, original hype behind it, just being in development
Because
for so long, especially behind closed doors, and then when the final release actually happened, it never held up to true expectation.
if I'm not mistaken, Starfield was announced in 1999.
Yeah, which that right there, you're talking the aspect of what, 23 years, 24 years?
Yeah, because they thought too broad and didn't actually allow the devs to actually. If I'm not mistaken, they didn't even allow the devs to start actually working on the game until like what, 7 years ago?
Yeah, which that's kind of outrageous if you actually think about it. They
For a
came up
game
with
to
a
be in development that long, but did not, for a game to be in development for that long and not actually have a good amount of depth to it is what causes the community to not even really care about it. And that's like, had they just kept the game under wraps until it actually started development, I don't believe it would have done as bad as it did in the sales aspect. Its real downfall is going too broad, is what it really came down to.
yeah. I mean, personally, I mean, like back in the day, I tried one of Bethesda's titles called Rage, and like still to this day, it's really the only true Bethesda title I've actually played to more than halfway through the game, but still I never even ended up finishing it. And then just even after that, trying games like Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 and stuff like that. Like it could definitely be just a preference thing. Um, but Bethesda games to me, they just never really stuck from the get go. Like it was. I guess it was one of those things. They are a company that more or less. I'm pretty sure it comes down to the aspect they focus more on um concepts of games that I'm just not all that interested in, at least on a personal preference aspect.
Bethesda is one of those types of companies that either you love them or you really don't. Either you're on one side of the spectrum or the other. Bethesda games are very focused in on a niche group of people, not a broader audience.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, definitely is a real true statement if I ever say so. Like I don't think I've ever to this day seen a Bethesda game that housed enough interest in me to actually finish it. Like I came close with Rage, but I don't remember how far I got into it, but it really dwindled out my interest when I got like a little more than halfway and I just finally bit the bullet and said nope, not not going to go any further. It just got boring, I guess. I don't know what you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Wildlands, we are sitting at a whopping almost 2.5 hours on this podcast. A lot of great conversations, a lot of good things talked about. And I'd like to thank you for joining me on my stream, my podcast today. So
Yeah,
definitely
no
cannot
problem.
wait. Definitely cannot wait to have you on again. And yeah, definitely look forward to seeing your channel grow, as I'm sure you definitely look forward to seeing my channel grow. And I think with that being said, we're gonna sign off on the podcast of this episode.
Definitely will do.
Alrighty. We'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for tuning in.